Hello everyone, welcome to the presentation of the paper Blockchain Utility in Use Cases, Observations, Red Flags and Requirements. My name is Tommy Koens. I'm a PhD student at Radboud-University in the Netherlands, and I also work at ING. The motivation for this research is that in 2021 there will be an estimated of $9.2 billion spent on blockchain. And indeed, blockchain is proposed in many use cases as a solution to address a particular problem. And I'm sure everyone here can think of a use case where blockchain has been proposed. However, there is a lack of systematic evaluation of the use cases and in particular the utility of blockchain. So what we did in our research is a systematic evaluation of 15 use cases in 3 domains, namely identity management, the Internet of Things and business process management. We chose these 3 domains because they're quite common in the literature, in particularly together with blockchain. And we also try to randomly, as much as possible, to select the use cases to prevent a bias on our side. So this evaluation led to 3 main results, namely 6 observations, the identification of red flags, and the proposal of requirement templates. And I'm going to discuss these 3 main results in the next slides. So first, these 6 observations. The first observation is that most of the use cases, they argue that centralized solutions have some downsides. However, none of the use cases discusses the downsides of decentralization, which we thought is interesting because in 1995 several researchers already mentioned that there are significant downsides of decentralization. And we believe these should be discussed when you think of implementing a blockchain. The second observation is that fallacies occur on blockchain properties. For example, blockchain is trustless, or the blockchain is immutable, or blockchain is fully decentralized. And there already is research about these fallacies that they are indeed incorrect. However, we observe that these fallacies are being used in the use cases as an argument to use blockchain. Our third observation is that, as you may know, blockchain has several limitations. For example, transaction scalability is one of the current limitations in for example, Bitcoin or Ethereum. But none of the use cases addresses blockchain limitations. And when they are being addressed, they introduce a centralized solution, which makes you wonder why they choose blockchain in the first place at all. So the fourth observation is that blockchain is being applied despite that other technologies are available. And this also relates to the fifth observation, that other technologies other than blockchain are not considered in the use cases at all. The sixth observation is that there is a lack of clear requirements in all of the 15 use cases that we evaluated. And I will discuss the lack of requirements in one of the further slides. So to conclude these 6 observations, the first 3 observations, they relate to the proposed solution itself. We concluded that blockchain or utilizing blockchain cannot be warranted based on the 15 use case descriptions. And we also believe that this is not limited to these 15 use case descriptions themselves. We assume that it will also apply to other use cases. And observations, the last 3 observations, they relate to the deficiencies of the proposed solution. So in all 15 use cases, we concluded that blockchain may be a suboptimal solution for the 15 use cases. And from this conclusion, we proposed red flags. So raising 3 out of these 4 red flags signals that blockchain may be a suboptimal solution. And the 4 red flags are, the first one is that the use case description does not contain clear requirements. The second red flag is that the use case description does not consider other technologies other than blockchain. The third red flag is that the current blockchain issues are not being addressed. And the fourth red flag is that the use case introduces some kind of centralized solution. So raising any 3 of these red flags for a use case signals that blockchain is a suboptimal solution. And we also saw that red flags 3 and 4 are related to the use cases, or in the 15 use cases, because if the blockchain issues are not being addressed, then we believe that the use case descriptions are not complete. Because as we know, blockchain currently has some issues. However, if they are being addressed, then typically they are being addressed by the introduction of a centralized solution, which where you can question whether or not you have to use blockchain at all. So, going back to observation 6 for our main first result, is that there is a lack of clear requirements. So not defining requirements imposes a risk to the use case implementation. If you don't know what you're aiming for, then how can you choose a technology? And none of the 15 use cases had clear requirements at all. So this is why we proposed 8 requirement templates. And on this slide you can see 2 examples. So the first one I'll briefly discuss is that the system shall be able to process a number of transactions per second. So here you have to define how many number of transactions per second the system should be able to process, which is important because if you're building on an Ethereum blockchain and you aim to process more than 14 transactions per second, you definitely should circumvent the current limitations of the Ethereum blockchain. So, as future work, we consider that evaluating other use cases with our red flags should be performed. So we did evaluate our 15 use cases with the red flags, and 3 of the 4 red flags were raised for all 15 use cases. But it would be interesting to see if this also goes for other use cases. Evaluating other use cases that use a blockchain technology other than Bitcoin or Ethereum would also be interesting, as our use cases either use Bitcoin or Ethereum blockchain. The third future work that I'd like to mention is that additional requirements should be set, such as trust requirements. Although the requirements templates that we have proposed, they are clearly measurable, such as the number of transactions per second, but trust requirements are much harder to set in our experience. And finally, in most of the use cases that we evaluated, there is a need for decentralization. But we found that this typically seems to be the opinion of the author, who thinks that there is a need for decentralization. But of course there are many other uses of a particular system, and it would be interesting to determine whether or not these other users also find that there is a need for decentralization, or if they're fine with a centralized system. So to conclude this brief presentation, so there is a global attention on blockchain, and there is going to be about $9 billion going to be spent in 2021 on blockchain. And indeed there are many use cases that propose blockchain as a solution. However, there is a lack of systematic evaluation of these use cases, in particular on the utility of blockchain. So what we did is a systematic evaluation of 15 use cases. From this evaluation we made 6 observations, and in summary, for all 15 use cases, utilizing blockchain cannot be warranted. And the second one is that blockchain may be a suboptimal solution for these 15 use cases. And we believe that this also may be the case for other use cases as well. To identify, or to quickly identify whether or not blockchain is a suboptimal solution, we proposed red flags. We proposed 4 red flags. If 3 of these red flags are raised, then it's likely that blockchain will be a suboptimal solution. Another finding that we did from our observations is that all 15 use cases that we evaluated, there is a clear lack of requirements. And this is why we proposed a set of 8 requirements templates that should help anyone that is defining a use case to clearly define their requirements. Because we believe that use cases should define their requirements before choosing a solution. And a solution should be chosen based on the requirements, not vice versa. This concludes the presentation. If you would like to talk about the paper, or if you have any questions, please let me know. And thank you for watching.